Hello and welcome back, artists and designers. We're in part 2 of our Dia de los Muertos skull, so let's dive right in here. We're going to make some of our features in the skull itself. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the eyes. I could very easily use a ellipse tool and try to get this in here, and that's going to get me pretty close. I could probably rotate it, and that's probably absolutely just fine. I have no problem with that. I am going to also show you guys here the curvature tool. If you haven't tried this yet, curvature is kind of like the pen tool, but it starts with curves. So I'm going to click once, and then I'm going to go to the next point where I feel like I need an anchor point. And you'll notice that automatically it starts kind of having this curve come off of it. And you're just going to kind of follow that around. And anytime you feel like you need to add an anchor point, we're going to click until we get back up to where we started, and you see that little circle go. And with just about 5 clicks, I was able to pretty much replicate that shape with the curvature tool. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and select this and do that rotate or the reflect trick that I did last time. So I'm going to select it, choose my reflect tool. I'm going to go to my guideline, hold Alt, click once, and it should flip right up here on vertical and hit copy, and I get a mirror image over there. Let's do that with the nose. I'm going to try the curvature tool and see how it works, but since this has a point, I might not be as happy with what I get. So let's do here, and then again I'm looking to end on that guideline. That honestly looks pretty good. I'm going to hit escape to leave the curvature tool. The key is that you're starting on that guideline, you kind of click around, you end on the guideline. So now let's try that reflect trick again. So I'm going to select it, I'm going to choose my reflect tool, I'm going to go to my guideline, hold Alt, and I'm going to click it, I'm going to say make a copy, and there we go. Now I have those two parts. The only difference here is that these are two separate pieces. So let's see what happens if I combine these together with my shape builder. So I'm going to select both. I'm going to grab my shape builder, and will I be able to click on this? Well, right now as I hover over it, I see one gray box showing up. So if I click, it merged that together, and that looks pretty good if you ask me. That merged that together into one single kind of heart shape, and I'm pretty happy with that with the curvature tool. So that satisfies the nose. You could probably do that a number of other ways, but curvature tool worked for me. I'm going to go down to the teeth now, and this is probably one of the most challenging parts. So let's talk about how to do this. I'm going to try and use simple shapes, rectangle primarily, to do this. Again, we're not looking for perfect teeth. We just want to get the basic shape of the teeth down. So I'm going to go ahead and start right on my guideline. I'm going to go right here, guide, there we go. And I'm going to drag this first tooth out, and I'm just going to do 1. So I'm going to get that lined up. I'm going to crank down my stroke because I think it's a little thick. Let's keep it at 2. And I want to round out, if I round out the corners, remember I'm going to round everything together. So I'm going to click this one. I'm going to hold shift and click this one. I think I want the top fully rounded. And I don't want the bottom totally square, so I'm going to click this one and this one. And I'm going to just round these out a little bit right here. So to me, something more like that. Oops, this and this. I think that looks okay. Now it's not letting me round it anymore, but I think, let me check something here. Scale, corners, and effects, I want to make sure that that is checked. So you want to have those buttons checked here. So I think that'll be okay for my first tooth. It looks a little bit big. I'm going to shrink it up a little bit. So I'm going to take that first tooth that I made. So again, let's repeat that one more time to make sure, because all the other teeth are based on it. Guideline, drag it out to about the size that you want for your first tooth. Click, shift, click, round out the top, click the bottom one, shift this one, round that out a little bit, decide how far you want to go. For me, I'm going to do something like that. To me, that looks like the basic tooth shape. Okay, I'm going to take my first tooth here. I'm going to grab my center point. I'm going to hold the Alt key to get a copy. And I'm going to hold Shift, because if I hold Shift, it kind of locks it into that horizontal. And I'm going to bring that over and get those to line up right there. Okay, so this tooth, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So I'm going to scale it in, scale it down a little bit. There's my next tooth. Same process. Click it, hold Alt and Shift, slide it over, third tooth, again scale it a little bit, Alt, Shift, drag, this one maybe a tiny bit smaller, Alt, Shift, drag, smaller still. Each time I'm getting a little bit smaller. Now I can see that I'm getting off the smile, but that's okay. I'm going to fix that in the next step. Alt, Shift, drag. Again, getting this all lock in here, and then I think I'll do one more thing. So Alt, Shift, drag, and I think that'll be my last tooth right here, and we'll just shrink that down a little bit. So basically they're getting a little bit smaller each time as they go down. Now I'm going to select all of these. I'm going to select all my teeth, and I think I'm going to go over here to my Align tool, and I just want to make sure the bottom of the teeth, so this bottom part of the tooth, I'm going to make sure that that's all lined up on the vertical bottom. And they didn't move, so I think they were all good. Okay, and I'm just going to clean up my stroke. Since I scaled them, it scaled the stroke, so I'm going to choose 1 point and maybe 2 point. There we go. I think I'll leave it at that for now. All right. So I have created the top half of my teeth. I'm going to adjust this one a tiny bit, put that back to 2 point. Perfectionist in me, there we go. All right, so now that I have this set of teeth, I'm going to select all of them. We only have to do 1/4 of the teeth, and then we're going to do the rest. So I'm going to do my reflect trick again. I'm going to hold the Alt key. Oops, got to choose the reflect tool first. Reflect tool, go to my guideline. Right here, hold Alt, click, and again it should be flipping right on that vertical. I'm going to hit copy, and there we go. Get my other side of my teeth. That looks good. Guess what? I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom teeth. Now I'm going to drag over and select all these teeth. So I have all of them selected. I'm going to do the same trick. Reflect tool. This time I'm going to go to just the bottom point on the path. It pops up and says path. Hold the Alt key, click, and this time I don't want vertical, I want horizontal, and you can see it's flipping down on that line here, and I'm going to hit copy, and I get a whole set of lower teeth right there. So now if I zoom out, I only had to make what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teeth here, and then I was able to duplicate and do the reflection and reflect the lower teeth, and I got all of them put in there by only having to do 7 or 8 of the teeth. So I'm going to select all of them now and maybe crank up that stroke one more to match with the others, and let's go ahead and put that in a group so I don't accidentally move them around. So let's group it. So that's now all one big group of teeth right there. So if I were to move it, it'll all come in a group. All right, last step. If we want to try and get this smile to happen a little bit, I could try to nudge each of these teeth up individually and then match the bottom ones up, but I'm going to use a little trick here in our effects menu. So with my teeth selected, I'm going to go to my effects button here, and there is the distort and transform. And that's not what I want, sorry. I want to go to warp. Now there's a whole bunch of options in here. Let's pick the first one. And you're going to get a little pop-up window, and you're going to say, well, that's not what I want. So let's adjust that. So I want this to go down, bend downwards, I think. So I want a little bit of a bend, but I can also see they're kind of getting off of vertical, which looks a little bit weird. So can I adjust my vertical? And I can. So if I go this direction, I can get it a little bit closer back to vertical. So for me, I'm looking here, and for me it looks like my bend to match the smile is maybe somewhere about between 15 and 20 maybe. I'm going to go with 15. And my vertical bend is about -8. And that seems to get it lined up. Let's see if I go -9, -6, maybe -7, somewhere in there. So -15% for the bend and -7 for my vertical, and that gets me lined up pretty good. I think I'm happy with that. I'm going to hit OK. Now you can see it's kind of weird because it's applying effect to the regular teeth, so they kind of adjust where they're at a little bit, but that's why you put this thing in a group. And I can move it up. And to me, that looks pretty good. I know it's not perfect, but it matches the overall look of what we're going for. And I have my basics of my Dia de los Muertos skull done. So we used the curvature tool to create the eyes, reflected it, curvature tool to create the nose, reflected it, did a quick shape build there. And then for the teeth, we only had to create one tooth with the rounded rectangle, or we rounded out a rectangle. We duplicated and made it progressively smaller, and we took half of it, reflected it, and then the whole top half of the teeth reflected it. And the final step is to do that secret little effect and warp option, and we played around with our settings in there to be able to get that curve for the teeth. Okay, I know that's a lot. Good luck, have fun, and I will see you in the next video, and we'll start to add some details to our Dia de los Muertos skull.